that was when I was working for Rockwell on the Apollo program, and it was the very first shot that was to be manned. It was just to be an orbital thing. The booster was just a Saturn 1 or whatever, which was made up of a cluster of redstones and stuff. It wasn't anywhere near big enough to go to the moon with, but it was big enough to get the capsule up into orbit and do some of that early testing. And it was sitting on pad 34 for one of the final checks. And they were using pure oxygen in the capsule, as they would in a real flight. The thing was all locked and closed, and they were in their suits, and it was just like dress rehearsal for a flight. And it was night time. I guess I'll get off center here. It was at night when this test was going on. I wasn't on shift. I was on a date down in Cocoa Beach in this gymnasium at the Cocoa Beach High School. There was some thing going on, I've forgotten what. This date's daughter was involved, and so I was down there. And the word came over the loudspeakers there had been a disaster at the Cape. And then, so everything stopped, and I just said, I better get out there. So I get in the car and I go out there. And they wouldn't let me on the pad. You know, they'd roped it off by then. But when they found out that I was in charge of the electrical system of the thing, why, they grabbed me, so to speak, and hauled me to this room, and they were hauling other people in and calling other people in and starting the investigation. And they had tape recorders, and they were taping everything you said to every question. And, you know, the Inquisition had started. And that was only like an hour after the accident. And I never really got into a terrible lot of trouble. There was, you know, no real way to say that I did anything. I don't know if anybody actually got in trouble over this thing. But in the days after that, and the weeks after that, and even the months after that, this investigation ground on and ground on. They stopped the program while they investigate. And the first thing they did is when I got to the office, probably Monday morning or whatever, they had moved all of the file cabinets containing all of our records. I'm not talking about secret. The whole program was not secret. It's just every record we had they were going to look at. Mm-hmm. And they moved them all into one room, and they'd put a guard with an automatic gun, you know, mm-hmm. there to guard. They were going to make sure nobody changed any of these records. NASA became paranoid, and furthermore scared to death the program was going to be dropped, you know. Mm-hmm. And of course, Rockwell was just about as scared because they thought they'd lose the contract. And so then they began this investigation, a long, grinding process of detail. It's not worth going through probably, but you had to go through every test we did and every result and talk about it and explain it, and I'll go on. Then they got to a portion where they wanted to physically examine the spacecraft. Well, they were already examining it, but for the engineers like me, they wanted to get in there and measure every wire, for checking for shorts and miswire and all that stuff. Well, this thing's burned up. It's a mess, you know. And my boss, in the meanwhile, Bill, what the heck was his name? No, Selma, what's Bill's name? Oh, you're not listening. Eckmeyer. Bill Eckmeyer was my boss. And Bill Eckmeyer was a crazy man. I mean, I don't know how I find these people, but he was bananas. Now, here's a guy, he's nice looking, intelligent man with a good education, has a wife and 4 kids, and he has a nice house in Cocoa Beach. you know, ideal guy. Except he was nuts. And I knew already there was something wrong with this guy, even before this fire. He used to buzz me. I had a buzzer on my desk that he had, you know, and he could, whenever he wanted me or one of his other supervisors, he'd buzz, you know, rather than come around or send his secretary or something, you know, he'd buzz you. I got so jumpy with that guy that every time that buzzer would go off, I'd actually jump. I mean, he'd call me in and say, I'm sorry, Ray, but I'm going to have to let you go. I'm going to put Bill over here in charge. And I remember, I'd fight with him about it. I said, you can't. I won't work for Bill. I said, he used to work for me, and he was an awful employee. I won't work for him, you know, that kind of stuff. And the next thing you know, he'd forget all about it. And maybe a couple or 3 weeks later, he buzzed me again, you know, and I go in, and he was going to fire me again. I was getting fired all the damn time, you know. And he never had, a legitimate reason. He just was crazy. Well, anyhow, it was an odd thing. But how did this go? I had put in a change request back to Downey Engineering, which he reviewed, and the request was for them to put some covers over the electrical harnessing because they were getting damaged all the time. You know, people that worked in the spacecraft doing this, that, mechanics, one thing, and were kicking it and dropping tools on them and nicking the wires, and my people were being overburdened repairing this stuff, see. And so I put in a request that went across his desk to put covers over these wires to protect them from damage. Now, I had no idea about fire or anything. I was just protecting all the work we were able to do. And he saw that, and he thought I was up to something. You know, he's a weird person. And he called me on about it. And, what are you trying to do here? You know, we can't add anything like that. There isn't anywhere near. We got a weight problem. Everything is weight sensitive. Can't afford it. Why are you sending it in? Well, you know. So he always gave in. So it went through. He got turned down for weight. He was right, for weight reasons. But he always had a funny thing about it, like I was trying to pull something. When the fire occurred, I was the cause in his mind. Absolutely the cause. He was sure that I was trying to prove a point about this weight, not this weight thing, but this wire damage thing, and they had turned me, he had warped that all around to where I had done that deliberately somehow to prove a point. But he couldn't begin to prove it, good God, there was no way. And so what he did, and he told me this, he says, you're going to pay for this. He says, I can't prove it, but you're going to pay for this. I'm going to put you on third shift. I'm a supervisor. He puts me on third shift to wring out this spacecraft. All this burnt crap, burnt wires, charred this, charred that. Now, there were other people doing it on first and second shift, but third shift was the rotten shift, you see, and supervisors shouldn't be doing it in any case. But that's what he made me do. And for over a month, every third shift, I had to go out there and get into this burnt out hulk and make these measurements with ohm meters, and stuff for each and every wire, and put it in a log and what the resistance was. Well, almost every one of them was shorted. You couldn't hardly get anything but a short. Yeah, right. And because the NASA was so paranoid, they had a guard with a gun at the door, so you couldn't, they watched every move you made. They had an astronaut at the door hatch watching every move you made so that you couldn't change anything or alter anything. They had an inspector next to you who was tabulating every measurement you got, so you couldn't make anything up, kind of thing. Yeah, and this just went on for over a month. It was one of the worst periods of my life because it was awful smelling in there. dirty. I mean, you had to wear a clean bunny suit with, you know, the bunny feet and gloves to go in. And in 5 minutes, you look like you've been working in a coal mine. It's nothing but charred stuff, you know. I don't know why they thought you had to have a bunny suit on. I guess it kept your clothes getting dirty. Well, I didn't have clothes underneath, but I guess I would have had to have something on. I stole a clue out of there, in spite of all these guards and guns and the inspector, and I still got it up there. I came to the conclusion in my own mind from looking around, snooping around, that what happened was that Gus Grissom, who was sitting in the seat over on the left, kicked. He is kind of temperamental guy, short fuse guy, and you could hear the tape, and like he was kicking, you know, to readjust his position. He'd been laying there a long time, and he just didn't do it in a careful way, and he kicked one of these wires in one of these bundles against something sharp and shorted it, made a spark, and 100% air, oxygen, you know. And I'm convinced, because that's where it started, and you can tell from all the flame patterns that came out of the study, it was right down where his foot was. And that's my theory. But anyway, I put in my time. And like Thelma was saying, Bill Eckmeyer left and went back to California after that investigation. I don't know beans, except that the next thing I heard, he'd committed suicide. I have no idea why. Don't think it had anything to do with the spacecraft. Probably just a personal thing that occurred to him.